Hello and welcome back, guys. This is graphic design part 2. For the previous part, we have discussed more about graphics in education, advantages, disadvantages, more about, graphics in general. Now in this part, which is part 2, we are going to go further in-depth information about the categories of graphics. For example, we have pixels, we have vectors. We are going to learn all the information about these two main categories, what are the differences between them, and so on. Okay, so we do have actually two main categories that you should know. All right, the first one is called pixels and the second one is called vectors. Now if you want to be able to differentiate between images, what categories of these images, you need to be critique when you look at the images. For example, if you see here, now the edges of these images, when it's get larger, it's going to be more of, blurry. It's not very clear, right? While on the other hand, if you look here in this slide, it doesn't matter how much we actually zoom in, the quality of the image, it's still okay. We can see the edges, there's no blur ending or whatever. Now, why some pictures do not have this kind of blurry, edges or ends? If you want to answer this question, look at the differences between these two groups of images. If you look at the first one, it's actually not real objects. It's a drawing, all right? While the other one, the other group, is actually a real objects. It's an images of real objects. Now, if you zoom in the first group, the quality will stay the same. While on the other hand, if you zoom in for the images, it doesn't matter how much the quality of the image, it's going to pixel at the end of the day. All right, so these are the main differences between pixels and vectors. Okay, so in summary, there are two types of graphics or categories of graphics. All right, we do have bitmap or what's called pixels or images, or and then the other one is called vector graphics. Now the differences between these two, the first one is consists of dots or bitmaps. All right, when you zoom in or you enlarge the image, it's going to show you the pixels that this image consists of. While on the other hand, the vector graphics, it doesn't show any pixels, so the quality stay the same. All right, let's learn more about these two categories. So the main difference actually between these two categories, which is bitmaps and vector, stems more from what they are made up of. As I mentioned, the bitmap graphics are made of a group of small dots, which is called pixels. On the other hand, vector graphics are made up of lines, curves, and fills, which is pure colors. That's why when you enlarge the vector graphics, there is no dots in it. There's no pixels. The quality stay the same. Alright, so we are going to learn more about bitmap and vector in details. Now, if you can see here in these images, bitmap graphics, which is also known as raster graphics, consist of grids of very, very tiny dots that are called pixels. each pixel is assigned, is like, one color, okay, a sign of one color. These colors, if you put them together, all right, they are going to give you an image. They are going to present an image, all right. So whatever the image that you can see, whether it's, photography from your camera, your phone, it's actually consists of dots, very tiny dots called pixels. Now when you enlarge this image, okay, you are going to see at the end of the edges of the pictures that are, you know this image is consisted of these kind of dots or pixels. Now if you can see, this is an example of bitmap uh, image, okay. If you can see the small image here, the quality, you can see the quality, it's fine. But when you enlarge the image, this is actually what this image consists of. So it's like dots, each dot of these dots has one color. When they arrange together, they give you, or they show you, illustrates to you this image, which is a bitmap image. Now when you zoom in to the image, you can see the individual squares that make up the total image. So one image could be the total of, millions of squares, that each square present one color. Now when all these colors arranged together, they present the video to you. Now how the quality is different between one image to a different image, it is more about the size of the bitmap. Okay, so when you increase the individual pixels, makes lines and shapes appear more, let's say, more quality. Now what is the difference between a very expensive camera and a common price camera? The difference is all about these square bitmap dots. The professional cameras, if you zoom in, you will find millions of individual pixels in this picture, while on the other hand, the not very expensive camera or not professional camera, the amount of pixels in the picture is less. So when you increase the pixels in the image, the quality is going to be high, okay, and vice versa. Okay, we have talked about the amount of pixels in one image and how it affects the quality of the image. Now the amount of information per pixel is also known as the color depth. We do have 4 categories of color depth, which is first monochrome, grayscale, color, and true color. Monochrome, which is 1 bit of information per pixel. Grayscale, 8 bits of information per pixel. Color, 8 to 16. True color is 24 to 32. Now if I ask you a question here, what is the difference between monochrome and true color? Obviously it's the quality of the image. Okay, when 1 pixel has 24 or 32 bits of information, this is going to be a very, very, very good high quality of images, while on the other hand, monochrome is going to be very low quality because it has only 1 bit of information in 1 pixel, so means 1 color. Okay, while the true color here, it has 24 more details, okay, more colors. So is going to give you the ability to zoom in larger and larger and larger, and you still have a very good quality. Okay, so one more time is all about the size of the picture. The bigger the picture, the more colors or pixels it has, and the more space it will take up, because one bit is not like 5 mega image. All right, if you can see, if you go to a studio and take a photo and you ask them for the original photo, the size of the photo is going to be very high, maybe 2, 3, 5, sometimes 10 megapixels. Okay, so the size has to do with the more colors or more pixels it has, that is actually affecting the quality of the image. So why do we actually use bitmap for, or what is bitmap suitable for? It's actually for realistic images. All our real photos, uh, the photos that we take in our phones, in our cameras, this is actually a bitmap photo. Okay, and also the complex drawing, when you scan the drawing and put it in your computer, is actually a bitmap photo. And the images that requires fine details, when you go, for example, to a professional studio for an image shooting, and the studio actually, the photography uses a very professional camera. These kind of images, when you put them in a very large LCD or TV, you are going to notice that the quality is very high. So when you want a very good quality, very high quality, you need more details in the photo, you go with more pixels or more bitmap. Okay, so where do we actually bitmaps come from? Why do we have this kind of category? How to create the bitmap? How to create the bitmap category is using your computer, as I mentioned, whether it's a photo, artwork, scanner, digital camera, the Microsoft Office, any Microsoft software that you use, or any software that you use for graphic design as well, for example Adobe Photoshop and so on. All these kind of softwares are going to produce bitmap images. Now, for the advantages of bitmaps, they are very easy to actually create, produce, and they are actually photorealistic images. They are able to accurately present the wide range of colors and shades in a complex images, because each pixel is actually colored individually, so you can see more details, more universally available interchange, the file formats. For example, it's actually very common to use. If you are working on the graphic design business, you will get to know the importance of bitmap. Not every graphic designer has the ability to work with vectors, but they must know, or they must work with bitmap. So bitmap is like the main common category of any graphics in the world. Now, when we talk about the disadvantages, we do have many. Okay, so bitmaps formats actually have a fixed resolution. As we mentioned, if you enlarge, if you zoom in, the quality of the image is going to turn into pixels. Okay, cannot be resized without some effects on the clarity. So if you want to resize the image, is going to affect the quality. This is unlike the vector. If you zoom in, doesn't matter how much you zoom in, the quality will stay the same. Okay. Okay. When the bitmap image is enlarged, the individual colored squares, pixels become visible, and the illusion of the smooth image is lost. So, as we saw in the example of the human eye, if you zoom in, you can see actually the real pixels of this image. Okay, the amount of the digital storage bitmaps are very intensive, and the higher the resolution, the larger the file size. This is as I mentioned in my example, if you go to a professional studio and you take a photo, you will notice that this photo, one photo could reach to maybe 10 megapixels. And this is an example here. If you see the camera, the photo of the camera, this is the real photo, and this is when we zoom in. The quality is very bad. And you can see here at the lemon, the edge of the lemon, actually you can see the pixels, you can see the squares. All right, same goes to this example as well. This is the original image right here, and when you enlarge 400%, you can see at the end the edges of the key, you can see the pixels, the squares that we have mentioned before. Okay, now let's learn about the vector. Vectors, or what is also known as a draw type images, were images were created using a computer. Okay, not using a scanner, not using a camera. This is actually a software in your computer. You can create this vector like Adobe Illustrator. This is actually a software especially for creating vectors, vector images, vector designs. So how actually this work is not according to dots or pixels or squares. No, it's actually based on drawing elements or objects such as lines, rectangle, circles, etc., as we can see. So one more time, vector graphics are actually composed of lines and path. It's all about the lines, and then you fill them with a color. Now, if you ask yourself, what is the difference between the bitmap and the vector? What is actually the vector? Now we know the bitmap is a real image, okay? So what are the vector graphics? Vector graphics actually use a mathematical relationships between points and path, and then connecting them together to describe an image or to describe a place, a distance, okay? For example, a rectangle, square, a line, okay? When you connect the dots of a rectangle together and then you fill it with a color, this is what we call a vector. So vectors, guys, is more about programming, okay? It's all about the computer language. So when you draw a line or when you draw any object in the software that you are using, you are actually giving orders to the software, like, you know, a set of instruction to what is the height, what is the size of the shape, the position of the object that you are creating. So it's more about the computer language. You are actually dealing with the computer language, okay? So if you want to make any change, let's say in the size or whatever, you are going to describe the precise change that you want to create. Okay, so it's all about relationship between one point to other points. Okay, now for the advantages of vectors, we have three advantages. First, it's very easy to manipulate and edit because you actually created them using the software. Okay, and then they are very easy to scale, very easy to resize. They are scalable, right, without any loss in quality. And finally, they are actually very small in size compared to bitmap images. Now, these three the advantages of vectors is the e-learning activity for this week. I'm going to post it in e-learning, and what you need to do is you need to answer these three questions by your own wording. Okay, do not copy and paste. More about the advantages. Vectors are actually based images are made up of scalable objects, so it doesn't matter how much you actually scale or resize, the quality are going to stay the same. While on the other hand, bitmap is made of pixels. If you zoom in or if you scale the image, the quality is going to be affected. Okay. Now for the disadvantages, it must be an expert or a graphic designer. You must be professional actually to create this kind of images. It's more complex. You need drawing skills, for example. Cannot display photorealistic quality because it's actually coloring, drawing. It's not real objectives. They are suitable for typical uses, for graphic design, posters, ideas, logos, and so on. It's not actually uh, real objects, so you cannot use vectors to create a photo of yourself to use it for your passport, for example. This is cannot be accepted. Now, if we compare between bitmap and vector, you can see the difference when you enlarge. For example, the first one, the vector, the line, if you can see, the line is very sharp. There's no pixels, there's no dots, while the bitmap you can actually see the squares. All right, so if we in summary compare between these two categories, which are bitmap and vectors, bitmap is actually pixel based. All right, if you zoom in, you can see the pixel, you can see the square, more realistic, big file size. All right, suffers from distortion problem, the quality. Okay, not easily scalable, difficult to convert to vector images. For the file format, it could be a JPEG, TIFF, and BMP. And for the vector, it's actually mathematically based images, which are not realistic. And for the size, it's more smaller when you compare it to bitmap. Okay, no problem with the resizing and the quality. Very easy to scale and resize, and can be converted to bitmap very easy. All right, and for the file format, the very famous format is AI, which is for Adobe Illustrator, and WMF, PCX, and SVG. Now that's all for today, for this part of the class, which is the categories of bitmap and vector, and I'm gonna see you in the next part. Thank you very much, and Bye for now.